I would like, if I may, to take you on a strange journey.
When most people think of horror, they think of monsters, gore, or the moment just before the killer jumps out. But in the Rocky Horror Picture Show and I Saw the TV Glow, the horror is not a creature. It isn't even an event. It's time. It's about the way that time bends, stutters, freezes, and fractures around queer characters. The way that time becomes hostile. Film scholar Robin Wood famously describes American horror as driven by the return of the repressed. The idea that whatever a culture tries to suppress will eventually break through, often in monstrous form. Under this framework, horror becomes a map of cultural pressure points, and for nearly half a century, queerness was one of the United States' most aggressively policed repressions. Juan Antonio Suarez expands this by arguing that queer experience destabilizes emotional chronology, that queer desire creates alternate temporal frameworks that reject heteronormative linearity. And Melody Hope Cooper adds on to this by describing the way horror constructs no-win zones, pockets where time becomes suspended or distorted, allowing queer temporality to appear. To understand why both films distort time so radically, we have to acknowledge the influence of the Hays Code. From 1934 to 1968, queer people could not openly appear on screen. They could be hinted at, punished, or coded as monstrous, but never affirmed. Even after the code ended, its habits didn't vanish. Its aesthetic, its anxieties, and its temporal delays haunted American cinema for decades. In this video essay, we'll be exploring how Rocky Horror and I Saw the TV Glow, although nearly 50 years apart, use horror to express queer time, one through eruption, the other through suffocation. Released just 7 years after the end of the Hays Code, Rocky Horror feels like a detonation, as if 34 years of forbidden queer desire finally burst onto the screen all at once. The film's camp, spectacle, and sexual fluidity did not simply arrive, they erupted. They represent what Wood calls the monstrous return of repressed desires that cannot be contained by dominant ideology. Frankenfurter embodies this return. He is gender fluidity, erotic excess, spectacle, and transgression personified, the precise elements the code policed.
I hold the secret to life itself.
His entrance is not just iconic, it's political. The camera gazes upward, the lighting shifts from electric blues and reds, and Frank descends like a glam rock deity. The sequence signals a rupture in cinematic time. The castle itself becomes a temporal anomaly, a space that rejects chronology. Cooper's description of horror's no-win is almost literal here. The castle exists outside of straight time, outside realism, outside the linearity Brad and Janet bring with them. Within its walls, time becomes chaotic, theatrical, and ritualistic. The time warp is not just a dance number. It's a declaration. The jump cuts fracture continuity, bodies move out of sync, lightings shift from green to magenta without explanation. Linear time collapses. Suarez's argument that queer desire produces emotional chronologies that refuse the straight timeline plays out visually. The scene embodies queer temporality, looping, excessive, nonlinear. Even costuming plays a temporal role. Frank's corsets, pearls, and sequins signify a fluid body, a body performing versions of itself. Brad and Janet begin the film in muted pastels, symbols of suburban straight linearity, but as they succumb to the castle's logic, their palettes shift. They move from beige to neon, from repression to expression. Their timeline dissolves.
And just a few hours after announcing their engagement, Brad and Janet had both tasted forbidden fruit.
Lighting just reinforces everything said. Scenes fluctuate between vibrant technicolor and moody shadow. Spotlights punctuate moments of erotic charge. The lab is green, the bedrooms are pink, the dining room is stark and cold. The colors track emotional time, not chronological time. The horror of Rocky Horror is not Frank's monstrosity, it is the collapse of the world's ability to repress him. The film shows what happens when queer time, delayed by decades of censorship, finally bursts.
Just seems like you're always somewhere else lately. No.
If Rocky Horror is eruption, I saw the TV glow as implosion. Where Rocky Horror is loud, I saw the TV glow is hushed. Where Rocky Horror bends time into a carnival, I saw the TV glow stretches time into a swamp. Slow, heavy, suffocating. This film belongs to a newer lineage of horror, the A24 era, where dread emerges from interiority, trauma, and alienation rather than monsters. It expresses Wood's theory from the opposite angle, not the return of the repressed, but the permanence of the repression. Owen's life is not interrupted by queer desire erupting. It is defined by queer desire never emerging. Time in I Saw the TV Glow is oppressive. Hallways stretch, nights linger too long, suburban spaces feel abandoned in broad daylight. The film's pacing mirrors dissociation. Scenes hang instead of moving forward. This is a temporal horror rooted in stagnation. Suarez's idea of queer memory is central here. Owen's memories slip between his real life and the pink opaque, the show that becomes his emotional anchor. Suarez writes that queer time often fractures the relationship between memory and reality. Owen's memory misaligns him from straight time. He lives slightly out of phase with the rest of the world. And Cooper's no win reappears, but instead of liberation, it becomes imprisonment. Owen exists in a temporal, frozen loop. Too late to become himself, too early to escape, and too trapped to move. His town becomes a waiting room for a life he never reaches. It feels like an abandoned set designed for a protagonist who never walks on stage. Lighting emphasizes this entrapment. The TV glow, especially the pink, represents the life he should be living, flickering inches from his face but always unreachable. Meanwhile, the world outside the screen is washed out, drained of color, drained of possibility. In this sense, the TV is not a portal, it is a mirror reflecting a life denied. When the film finally turns to body horror, it's devastating. Owen's identity literally ruptures through his body, a reverse of Frankenfurter's performative excess. Here, the body does not celebrate fluidity. It reveals the cost of repression. This is the horror of straight time, a timeline that consumes the queer self from the inside out. Taken together, these films map two ends of a queer temporal spectrum. With Rocky Horror, queer time erupts, repression breaks, horror becomes celebration, time loops, dances, explodes. With I Saw the TV Glow, queer time suffocates under the timeline of heteronormativity. Repression solidifies, horror becomes stagnation, and time freezes, weighs, and closes in. Connecting back to our scholarly support, we'll be going through how the framework ties them all together. With Wood, Rocky Horror is the repressed return, and I Saw the TV Glow is the repression that never leaves. With Suarez's explanation of emotional mechanics, Rocky Horror is queer desire reshaping the timeline, and I Saw the TV Glow is queer desire misaligning the self from time. With Cooper's spatial metaphor, Rocky Horror's no win is liberation, a carnival of queer time. But in I Saw the TV Glow, no win is an entrapment, a void of unrealized queer life. Both films, nearly 50 years apart, reveal how horror visualizes queer temporality, whether breaking free from straight time or being trapped inside of it. Across these films, horror becomes a language for queer time. In Rocky Horror, queer temporality explodes in color, glam, and spectacle, a joyful rupture after decades of silence. In I Saw the TV Glow, queer temporality becomes the source of horror itself, a haunting presence never allowed to surface. Both films remind us that time is not neutral. For queer people, time can be a monster or it can be a doorway. Horror cinema gives us a way to see that, to watch time distort, fracture, implode, or boom.